Hi, I'm Shamar Griffith, codename Comic Shams.
And I'm Andrew Tejada, codename Arate.
I'm a blurred with a love for artwork and comics and animation.
And I'm a writer in Blurred with a love for pretty much the same things.
We grew up together and spent much of our formative years watching and talking about DC superhero shows and content. In fact, we still do.
Every episode, we will discuss a DC production, compare it to its original source material, and share our thoughts on the adaptation.
We've enjoyed our conversations these past couple of decades, and we think you will too.
This season, we're looking at 16 years of DC animated movies to see which stories are sweet and which ones are sour on
yet another DC animated podcast, part of the Forgotten Entertainment family. Welcome to yet another episode of yet another DC animated podcast. My name is Shamar Griffith, codename Comic Shams.
And I am Andrew, codename Arate.
Andrew and I have known each other since 1996.
That was the year Rasputin, Dark Servant of Destiny came out, starring Alan Rickman as Grigory Rasputin, and Ian McKellen's in there. There's a plot, and there's healers and Death of Rasputin, and it's got it all, guys. I think I haven't seen it, but it's got like a lot of stars on IMDb.
Oh wow, impressive! I just would not have expected any movie about Rasputin to ever beat Anastasia, the non-Disney animated film.
That came out a year later.
Ah, okay.
We've known each other longer than Anastasia exists. So,
yes.
There you go. There's your benchmark, guys.
Well, whether it be he be a master caster of the dark arts or, he dances around while fighting, like in The King's Man. That was a spoiler, so in case you haven't seen that movie. But today
it's the only thing worth seeing in that movie, so you might as well not see it.
But today we are talking about a film that is heavily influenced with basically everything dealing with Russia, with Superman Red Son. Now, just a quick disclaimer, we do want to say that given our show, we don't necessarily talk about things in current events, but real quickly just say we do not condone the violence that's happening with the occupation of Russia and Ukraine. Just going to say that out there.
Yeah, fair to say. Fair to mention that now off the top, because this movie is heavily set in Russia and talks about a lot of relevant things. So yeah, fair to say at the top.
We are continuing on for our Sweet or Sour season with this 2020 film at a runtime of 84 minutes. This is a PG-13 film, so that already sets our minds on how we can discuss this film here. And it was directed by Sam Liu, who basically took the reins of all animated directorial spots for the DCAMU in some way, shape, or form in the last couple of years.
Hey, if you need a Feige, why not make it Sam Liu if you can't get Kevin Feige? That's what they say in the biz.
So we have the plot of today's film is, instead of fighting for the American way, what if Superman was the champion of socialism? I think that is the my social studies knowledge is like failing me right now with this.
I don't even know what state I'm in currently, because America didn't really help me out with that history and geography stuff. So I wouldn't worry about it.
All right, cool. We're fine with that, because we're gonna keep on moving along, because we have one of our first Elseworlds films. So before Marvel came out with What If, before, in a time where alternate realities and different mindsets were a thing, DC came out with the Elseworlds storytelling. So this is, if you're familiar with Elseworlds, you probably have watched crossover episodes of The Flash and Arrow, or Crisis on Earth X. All of those things count as Elseworlds. So basically, it's just, what if our heroes changed in some way, shape, or form? Like, what if Batman actually got the therapy that he needed to after his parents passed? So here our cast list is, of course, we have some perfect Elseworld casting, as we have villainous actor Jason Isaacs. You know him as Sinestro in a couple of DC animated films. He also played Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter series.
Indeed he
Today
did.
he dons the red cape as Superman. We got Roger Craig Smith. We mentioned him in the previous episode. He is returning as the voice of Batman. She's no stranger to the fandom world. You'll probably know her from Angel and Alias. And most recently, you probably know her as Caitlin Strucker on Fox's The Gifted, a live action story in the telling of the world of the X-Men. But today, Amy Acker lends her voice to Lois Lane Luthor. Yes, you heard that correctly. Lois Lane Luthor.
Yep. We'll get into it.
Yep. And more perfect Elseworld casting, Diedrich Bader removes his Cape Crusader cowl of Batman to play Lex the Bald Wonder, who actually has a lot of hair in this film, I gotta say.
Yeah, he's got that Rogaine going, man. It's good for him.
Yeah, definitely got that him subscription or something. Jim Meskimen, we mentioned him before. He voiced Beirut in Constantine City of Demons, the movie that still gives us nightmares. But today he voices not one but two presidents during our Cold War era film here. The DCAMU Wonder Woman returns as Vanessa Marshall comes back to voice Wonder Woman Diana Prince once again in this Elseworld story. Of course, we had to include these two goats of DC with Phil Morris and Phil Lamar, filling in as James Olsen and John Stewart, both respectively. And finally, this dude, we gotta give him his flowers because he was the voice of Charles Xavier and Wolverine and the X-Men, voiced many of the transformations from Ben 10. He was the voice of Doug Dimmadome, owner of Dimsdale Dimmadome.
That's all you had to say. That's it.
But yeah, this man's career goes so far back that he was a river spirit in Spirit of the Way, and then one of the Ice Titan. He was the Ice Titan in Disney's Hercules.
Okay.
So today we got to honor Jim Ward, who serves as the old-timey news anchor, George Taylor, who speaks in the beginning of the film to recount the fact that Russia now has a Superman, which we'll get into. But the reason why we're giving him his flowers is because this is the last role that Jim had as a voiceover in a film, because he decided to retire in 2021 due to complications from Alzheimer's and COVID. So yeah, now that we have everything set for our film, it's time to pop open some vodka and boom tube over to the beginning of Superman Red Sun.
Like any good superhero movie, this starts with bullies chasing the loner kid. And this time, right before the kid can get what is undeservedly coming to him, I was like, get what coming to him. He didn't do anything. This kid's pissing me off. Before the gets hurt, his friend Samushkas, so I might be butchering that, I am sorry, but for all intents and purposes, because they do it later, they call her Lana for short. So I think I'm gonna butcher
Svetlana and Shimonska, I think.
Yes, her name's Lana. For the purposes of this podcast, because I'd rather use the nickname than butcher her name. So Lana steps in to save him from the bullies, and this kid explains he's not afraid of fighting them, he's afraid of hurting them, and immediately spills the beans and reveals he has super strength, because this is a Russian Clark Kent right here.
Yes, and she's shocked when she sees this. I mean, we were shocked when she threw them hands, and they definitely, one kid definitely got a 360 turn on the way she punched him. To see this Russian version of Clark Kent lift up the truck over his head and then takes Lana to up in the air, showing that he can already fly. And there's the question of why is it that he never shared this before, and it was like, he never really had these powers until more recently. He's feeling these changes, which I don't know what happened to my version of puberty, because so she tells him that he needs to give his powers over to the state to help his country, and you can see this triumphant look on his face as we immediately jump to about 10 years later. The news report is coming through that the Soviet government has this alien superhuman, which they're calling the Soviet Superman, or just Superman for short, and it's leading into America's in a frenzy. They're trying to figure out, how do we even combat this man? They're thinking that, oh, this is fake news. But it's clear that it's real, as Joseph Stalin, at the site of a new hydroelectric dam that was built, um, reveals Superman to the world, as he's thanking the workers for building it, but saying that it could not have been done without the help of Superman, who comes up to give his own speech.
Yeah, and this is a pretty good speech about it. It shows how much humility this Superman has, that he really genuinely wants to give respect to the workers. He doesn't want to seem like this power hungry man. He just wants to serve his country in the best way possible. And that is just not enough for Lex Luthor watching in America, who just doesn't trust that Superman's intentions will stay all good, and his country's interest won't conflict with his. So he very casually decides, I'm going to drop a satellite on Metropolis and see what happens.
Not before he asked the president for also $12 million. So take that, Dr. Evil. So this leads into our next point in the film, where Superman is just living his life. He's just trying to be who he is. We also get an introduction to Lois Lane as well, or rather Lois Lane Luthor. But the news about the satellite coming down to Earth is causing everyone to panic. They immediately recognize that the satellite is going to crash into the northeastern seaboard of North America. So Superman decides that he's going to fly on over to stop the satellite from crashing into the ground, causing any kind of damage to Metropolis, which is, again, what Luthor had planned. And this leads into our first interaction between Superman and Lois Lane Luthor.
Yes, Lois Lane Luthor is not afraid to call Superman out, but Superman gives it right back, saying, like, look, I don't have a problem with America, but I have a problem with your capitalist husband. And I'm like, I can't say he's wrong.
He's out of line, but he ain't wrong.
So they have a public face-off, and she tries to goad him into an interview, and publicly he flies away, but he then agrees to privately meet with her. And again, they're having some really interesting conversations about the perception of America abroad, because while Lois is trying to hit him on the restricted freedoms a country might experience with one leader, one dictator above anything, he's hitting her right back with, what was America built on? Slaves and immigrants? Excuse me? What are you talking about, freedom? So and Lois even admits there's a gap between the American dream and reality. So they're both bringing up really strong points for their respective sides. But what breaks through to Superman in this argument is when Lois mentions that there are mass executions and gulags going on in Russia that he doesn't know about, and she pulls up with them read receipts.
I just want to go back real quick on just like that line that got dropped between the there's a mass like gap between the American dream and the American reality. That is A+ writing to me. Like, as soon as I heard that, I like did the sit back and then, that's a tweetable moment kind of thing. But yeah, so that's basically what you're gonna kind of be expecting from this kind of storytelling. And these thoughts go through Superman's mind as he flies immediately over to the location of one of these gulags. He, everybody that's there, all the guards, they're like shocked to see him, because this is something that was always hidden from him. So as he enters the building, because again, he is Stalin's like favorite, no one's going to try to stop him. I mean, he's also a super all-powerful being, so no one can stop him. He goes in and he starts seeing all the people who are just being held in this gulag. There are hundreds, almost like thousands of people just buried underneath the ground because which was also hidden from him because the whole building was lined in lead. He goes in, and some people are shocked to see him, but there's this one kid who, upon seeing him, is just like, oh, so you're the Superman. I've always heard that you had all these great powers, that you're a champion of the people, but if you have that super hearing, why couldn't you hear our screams this entire time?
Oh yes, I had to write this one down. Yeah, it was the they say you can hear a leaf fall from a million miles away, and yet you never heard our cries. Gosh darn, kid. You spitting. There's also a moment when he's talking to kids that you see bats fly behind him, great foreshadowing. But this is another.
And also, real quick too, it's like the kid is holding his parents' hand, both of whom seem to have died.
So a lot of subtlety there in the scene. And another subtle thing I like about this movie is that we're all used to seeing Superman's pose. He's traditionally arms down by his side, very open, very, strong. And here, Superman's neutral pose is to have his hands behind his back, clasped and held together. So just a really subtle posture change to let you know you're dealing with a new Superman. Whereas something like Injustice would say, hey, look at this guy. He's got a darker shade of blue. They do more than that. So while he is down there, he finds Lana and he's like, what could you possibly been in here for? And she says, for knowing him before he became Superman. And although Superman is able to get her back to the surface, along with all the other prisoners of the Gulag, it's too late. Whatever condition she's been in have strained her body too much. And it's a really, really poetic scene as well, because she's bathed in sunlight, which I do love when it's not rain. No disrespect, Batman. But I do love when sad scenes are in sunlight, and especially because Superman can absorb and heal with sunlight. To have Lana die in sunlight is a really sharp and strong contrast. And the last thing she says before she dies is that he is her hope.
This causes Superman to become enraged. He is no longer a fan of the whole entire system that he was put into, or rather a fan of Stalin, who he immediately goes to confront about all this. And the more he hears Stalin talk, the more he's realizing that, the true enemy of the people, the true enemy of the state is not America. It's not, the people who they're fighting against, or who are the people who are the people who are within the state who are trying to protest against them. Is Stalin himself. So calling back to a classic Superman move whenever he's in front of a president he does not like, just thinking about Injustice and thinking about Justice League Unlimited, where Superman uses his heat vision to completely burn down Stalin, killing him instantly. This alerts his guards, who immediately rush in, guns already pointed, and they're ready to take down whatever threat it is. But it's clear now that they even seem to side with Superman here as they bend the knee.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're smarter than 90% of thugs in the DC universe who try to shoot anyway. Like, is gonna do anything? Come on. So they immediately give up, which is fair. And I do want to point out the exchange I love in the scene between him and Stalin, where Stalin says, certain people must die for the system to work. And Superman goes, wise words, before he kills him. So that's kind of on you. You got to choose your words carefully, bro. That's not a Black Adam reference.
I was thinking it was a Black Adam.
It can be if you want, if you're part of the 90% who likes it. But this isn't a Black Adam podcast. This is a Red Sun. And at this point, we cut back to America, where we get another noticeable change. Jimmy Olsen is black, guys.
Yep.
Whoa.
just
Mhm.
like Supergirl and on the Arrowverse. But unlike Supergirl in the Arrowverse, this Jimmy Olsen is useful because he is in the government trying to do it to help with Lex Luthor. And at this point, Lois Luthor rushes in and says, "This is our fault, what happened to Stalin, because you
Mhm.
gave me those files." So once again, we're seeing Lex playing chess on an international stage, but he's not done because he has another science experiment up his sleeve. But we're not going to get to that yet because Superman's a little busy doing some work around the world.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Superman has decided to advance the communist ideals because he is siding with he's ending the Korean War by basically telling North Korea that, hey, if basically if you fuck around, you will find out. He demolishes the Berlin Wall. And this leads into him gaining more power, gaining more respect from his people. Of course, it also creates a side of people who don't necessarily agree with him, and not just talking about the American government, who are just seeing that he's intervening in things that just need to be taken more care of. But he's not going to worry about that because right now he's at a party. He's dressed up to the nines, got his premiere suit on as he is dancing with Princess Diana, aka Wonder Woman of Themyscira here, who has now entered the universe.
Yeah, and this is so with Elseworlds, not like all Elseworlds are the same, but you kind of expect for this to go a certain way, which is Superman and Wonder Woman are going to find a common ground because they like more forceful solutions to problems. But things are very different this time. Because this time around, um Superman and Wonder Woman have a conversation, and when Superman thinks it's going romantic, she's like, "I live on an island full of only women. You can do the math." So it becomes more about this friendship between them that is explored and deepened throughout the movie. And I do like, because often the Superman Wonder Woman relationship is reduced to this kind of lingering romantic tension between them, and we know he's got
Mhm.
Lois, so
Mm.
we know how it has to turn out every time. But it was interesting for them to explore that, and while they're enjoying at the party, they don't notice that across the world, Lex's experiment has gone a little bit too well.
Yeah, because so calling back to when Superman was able to stop that satellite from crashing, he took the satellite and threw it in the water. Probably not the best thing to do with recycling habits and all that, but I mean, things I guess were pretty lax back in the day. But from that satellite, Lex is able to pull where Superman was holding the satellite, and he pulls DNA from the imprints of Superman's fingertips into the satellite. I'm not entirely too sure about about how sound this science is, but I'm just gonna go because it's comics.
Sure.
And from that, he's able to clone a Superman who he calls Superior Man. Superior Man is basically everything Superman is, but stronger, faster. His abilities are, a bit more fine tuned, but more importantly, he is a product of the U.S. government, and he is owned by the U.S. government. He fights for the U.S. government to the point where instead of having an S on the chest, his emblem is actually just US written, styled in the same way that Superman's logo is. And generally, whenever you see him in comics, even his color scheme matches the typical Superman style that we see.
Superior Man indeed, because when they do a test, they shoot a bunch of bullets at him and they fly off. And I didn't even point this out. My roommate who was passing by pointed this out, that during the test, they're on two balconies on either side of Superior Man, and they're shooting at Superior Man and the bullets are bouncing out. Wouldn't that kill everybody who's shooting?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
How far are they going to go for this demo?
Or at least do a beanbag shot or something, man. Come
Y'all
on.
could shoot straight ahead. Like what is going on? And also we do find out that Superior Man has borrowed his celebratory pose from Hydra with the two arms pumped out in front of him. Whether that's intentional or not, I don't know, but I do love it. I was expecting him to say Hail Hydra, but now that he's struck his pose, he decides to give Superman the business. He flies right over to Russia, disrespectfully interrupts a nice night out for Superman, and is on sight.
Mm-hmm. Superman takes off the entire suit he was wearing, revealing that that he's ready to fight whenever need be. As Superior Man is just slapping Superman throughout all of Russia. There's at first a little dialogue in which, recognizing that Superior Man just came to Russia with no cause or anything, just to fight Superman. Superman calls him out on it. He says that it's typical of the fact that you guys you're coming here as an invader. We haven't done anything to you. We have caused nothing, and because you came to our home as an invader, I must justly take you down for that. The fight starts happening. Cars are crashing all around them. Superman is getting slapped through buildings. He's recognizing how much damage this battle is causing. So he slaps Superior Man halfway across the world into the Arctic.
I mean, he's just trying to follow DBZ rules, which is fight in an abandoned place.
Word.
I get it. So this fight is pretty well animated. It's pretty creative about using their powers. And because sometimes, I'm not going to name any names specifically of superhero movies that do this, but you can't understand the power scaling sometimes of how powerful people are in relation to each other. But in this fight, it's very clear that Superior Man is falling behind Superman. He just doesn't have enough juice. So guess what? Lex Luthor can apparently remotely juice Superior Man. So he starts remotely feeding Superior Man steroids and to pump up his muscles, because look, this movie needed a most jacked individual, and it's going to give you one, because Superior Man starts looking a lot like Brawley in this one.
Yeah, but Bizarro Broly.
Cyber Psycho Brawley.
Yes.
He's got that cyber psychosis.
Just watch Cyberpunk, y'all. So as this battle is happening, we see how more and more, as we mentioned, Superior Man is to start to deteriorate. He's talking a lot like our Prime Earth Bizarro. As the fighting keeps on happening, and Superman is truly holding it down. So Lex, he just keeps demanding that they keep powering up Superior Man. Lois even is there. She's just like, you're gonna kill this dude. And more or less, Lex kind of frames it as just like, this is what we have to do for science or for the world. Superior Man eventually gets to the point where he can't hold back all that power. So his body just starts shutting down, which leads to Superman stopping the fight to go and comfort his dying comrade. And he's asking him, like, what's happening to you? What's going on? And he can't explain, as Superior Man just disintegrates in front of him. And this creates more of a disdain that Superman has for Lex, because he knows now that Lex is the one that was behind it, and it's clear that they're willing to do anything, sacrifice anyone for their mission and their cause, which he always will continue to see as a misguided thing compared to his own ideals.
And I do really want to emphasize what you said about him pitying the enemy. He genuinely, Superman didn't even feel like he wanted to kill Superior Man necessarily. I think he recognized at a point that Superior Man wasn't going to win the battle, and would have just liked to send him home so he could do duty to his own country. But he was genuinely broken up. about this, which I think is a nice detail. So Lois also reveals she's not cool with this idea either of creating something to die, even though Luthor insists it's an it. She saw it differently. And as they have this moral falling out, Superman gets busy again because Brainiac comes for a visit. And unlike the movie we covered, which one was that?
Superman Unbound.
So unlike Superman Unbound, which we still can't figure out why the title was of that movie was such, he is able to beat Brainiac in a montage sequence, but does lose his hometown in the exchange, the capital crown jewel of Russia. And it's revealed that he keeps Brainiac around to use as a supercomputer for his own needs because he needs them soon, because we got Zack Snyder's Batman in the house, and he is killing and blowing up everything.
Yeah. So we jump again. We get another time jump here where the victories of Superman for the Russian people is clear. They've developed a museum for him, and as they're regaling these stories, Batman comes through on the PA system and tells them that you all are, basically supporting a false leader. He is clearly not here for the people. He is just destroying them. Like, even look at it as we see, like, really quickly, he mentions that people are being lobotomized and reprogrammed if they ever are try to do anything against Superman. And there's a quick shot where a person has like a metal piece in their head, and there's like the little Superman kind of logo etched onto it. So he tells them that, if I'm going to destroy everything that's a marker for, the pride of Superman, and you have 10 minutes to leave, which people frantically start rushing out. And the person that's doing the tour, she's just like, don't worry, we have enough time. And before she can even finish her sentence, the whole building blows up. And when she's Batman, you can see we pan out to him, and he says, oh, did I say 10 minutes? I meant 10 seconds.
So, yeah, we're basically dealing with the Joker here. Jesus Christ. Because he has no compunction about killing innocents if it gets his message across. And they just kind of leave him his motivations a mystery, because Superman's able to catch 3 of his flunkies who, I mean, you got to try to run, I guess, but there was really no point.
They didn't follow Batman's #1 rule. When all else fails, it's sewer time.
Yeah, they didn't do super sewer time, and that's what cost them in the end. Mm-hmm. By the way, the Gulag scene counts as super sewer time because they went underground.
Okay,
close enough. So while Batman is trying to get Superman his own way, we also get a quick moment where Wonder Woman saves some people, seeing that she's hanging around trying to help her friend Superman. And there's a moment where she's like, oh, of course men did this. And Superman tries to go, not all men. And I'm like, no. You can't be going around saying that. So while they are picking up the pieces from Batman's attack, we cut to JFK, everybody, who is hanging out with Hal Jordan, and they're seeing a Green Lantern ship. And they have an alien on the table who still has his ring intact. And instead of the ring choosing it, Lex Luthor just chops off that finger and just decides, let's see what we can do with this.
Yeah, that was I mean, I know that Lex likes to cut right to the point, but good grief, man. So now there's a idea that maybe that they're planning to reverse engineer this ring for the U.S. government, but we don't have time to really see about the development of that, because we got to head back over to Russia, where Superman's trying to deal with the aftermath of Batman's attack. And as he's like preparing for a dinner, he's having a dinner with the I believe it was the president of Korea, it was.
either president or an ambassador.
Yeah. Well, he's having dinner with this elected official, and there's a question that comes up because Superman is really just in his own world. But then the more this person is trying to speak with him, he questions like, "Hey, why aren't you siding with me on some things? Like, why haven't you done certain things like I've asked?" And he says, "Well, it's because you scare me." And this is the first time we kind of hear someone actively say who Superman sees as like a friend or someone that he's like connected to, or at least put into his circle, that he's ruling out of fear. It's a shock. It seems like things are blowing up in his face, especially the next explosion that happens where Batman creates his own bat signal amongst the area of Russia, where he creates a series of explosions that blow up in a way that it shows the bat symbol on the streets. And then Superman immediately hears Wonder Woman calling out to him saying that he needs to get there immediately.
Yeah, just like in Dark Knight Rises, when in doubt, just make sure you have a big ass logo of yourself instead of saving the people, because I'm sure the people will be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So this scene is quite possibly one of the most insane, in a good way, scenes I've ever seen between a Batman and Superman, because Batman has captured Wonder Woman with her own lasso of truth, which I don't know if this is the rule in every reality, but at least in this reality, can restrain her, because it's the only thing with enough power to restrain her. And since she is bound, Batman can order her to self-harm if he is attacked. So Superman's like, all right, buddy, you got me over a barrel here, but what's your real plan? That's when Batman reveals he has a series of red sun lamps, and he turns them all on and starts beating the bricks off Superman. Jesus, I have not seen a beating like this since Invincible, guys. And it is one of the most savage beatings I've ever seen Superman take. And at the end of the battle, Batman's like, I don't even want to kill you. No. And there's no Martha that's going to save him. There's no Martha moment that's going to save him here. Batman straight up throws Superman into a deeper prison and says, I'm going to keep you here for the rest of your life, essentially, while you watch me burn down everything you've built and free the world from your tyranny. But Wonder Woman, she's not that cool with this idea.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, one of Wonder Woman's weaknesses is being bound. This is a callback to our Wonder Woman character profile episode, in which that was one of her original weaknesses from back in the day. But at first it was like chains, but now it's definitely the lasso of truth. But she shows that, you know what? She is the one that is unbound. So Wonder Woman has broken out. It's clear, though, that it had a drastic effect on her. That it's clear that she was psychically and physically connected to the lasso of truth, as it drains her of the breaking of the rope, drains her of her power, or rather her age, really. Her youth. She goes gray, her body weakens, but she still has enough power to take the generator out and destroy it, leading to Superman being able to break out of his prison, where now he comes face to face with Batman, who's frantically trying to figure out his escape plan.
And Superman realizes, Superman unveils, because as he's done to other Batman subjects, he has effectively brainwashed them with the help of Brainiac, reprogrammed, and has turned them into essentially mindless robots. So when given the option of that happening to him, Batman just unalives himself instantly. He just explodes, and we don't get the full measure of the story of what was going on with him. We're kind of left to, kind of messed up to say, pick up the pieces of his story. But the arc is there. The arc is there of what how he got to this point. And this also is a breaking point because she broke her lasso. For Wonder Woman as well, who says, "I'm done with you. Like I just this was all your faults. This is this is why I'm in this situation in the first place. I'm leaving." So she takes off, disgusted with the mind control, because that's what Superman was going to do, without his consent. So, he flies off. She flies off, leaving for Superman to have a conversation with Brainiac about what's the next move.
Yeah, because Brainiac is showing about how Superman's efforts have been fruitful. There's like a rise in productivity and all of these crazy statistical numbers about the economy things that I'm pretty sure the political science major could probably explain to us better what this all means. But more importantly, this is another time jump in a way. We now have that in the United States, Lex Luthor has become president of the United States of America, and he has finally lost all of his hair. This is leading now, it feels like, into the next stage of the work where Superman, he decides to, I think he decides to just kind of figure out what to do for Russia, and this leads into the president calling out a strike against Superman. This strike gets picked up by Brainiac, and they're realizing that, hold on, it's a bit too fast to be missiles. And then this is where we see that the Green Lantern ring that was given to Hal Jordan has now been fully reverse engineered to create a whole new core of the United States government dedicated to these Green Lanterns. As we have pretty much every Green Lantern that we know throughout comics. We have Hal, we have John, we have Gardner. I believe Kyle made an appearance, but everybody is there for this battle of the Green Lanterns versus Superman.
Yes, as Super Smash would say, everybody's here.
I think we have to say multiverses now.
Multiverse. All right. Legally, multiverses.
Legal.
We see a lot of these. We see a lot of these movies. So I really do have to step back and applaud a moment of true creativity of an idea I've never thought before. This idea of giving a bunch of US soldiers Green Lantern powers and calling them the Green Lantern Corps. Come on, that is brilliant. Like, and having them fight petty US squabbles and conflicts, I love it. I love it. It's such a creative and cool idea. And to see them all working together to try to contain Superman. Of course, Gardner loses almost immediately.
Take that's another count to the Green Lantern L count there.
Once again, we're bringing it back, and this battle is really, again, another good animated battle, very creative in the constructs. And for a moment, the Green Lanterns almost beat Superman together. Mm-hmm. But at the last moment, Wonder Woman breaks him out. And although she is willing to help Superman, she was like, that everybody gets one. But you ain't ever seeing me again. I'm hiding from man's world. This is it. I just wanted to try to stop World War III, but I can see y'all gonna do whatever, so I'm out. And this is a great line where was it Gardner who said women, right? Or was that Jordan?
I want to say it was Jordan because I think Gardner was still in the water.
Oh yeah. Jordan goes, women, right? And Superman punches him out of the sky. So now, once again, we get it. It's such a funny dynamic, but Superman and Brainiac still working together and figuring out, okay, they've made this aggressive front. What is the next move?
Yeah, and that next move is to head on over to good old US of A, because Superman is tired of Lex just messing around with his life, messing around with his people, his livelihood, everything. So he and Brainiac fly on over to the White House, where once they arrive, they realize that there's no defense. There's nobody is there to greet them. Nobody's there to even stop them. So they're about to get ready to try to figure out what to do next when Lois comes out and she starts questioning a lot of his past. But more specifically, she questions it to the point where she has in her hands the bottled city of Stalingard, the home city of Superman in our movie here.
And this is really another really interesting scene that really takes advantage of this world because Lois says, you know, you're trying to talk about all this liberation and for people around the world, but why haven't you liberated your own city?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I just haven't been able to. And Brainiac's like, no, you could have done it at any time, but you kind of implied that you didn't want to. So, which is a very interesting, question. So at this point, this really seeing the city, realizing what he's lost, sacrificed to on this crusade, makes him rethink everything, and he really wants to genuinely turn things around and build another kind of world. But Brainiac is like, nah, that's not acceptable, bro. We're about to destroy this whole thing. And immediately reveals that he has been playing Superman from the jump. He realized that he even let the force field down for Superman that allowed him to attack the ship, because he was like, why try to conquer one city when I could conquer the planet just taking a little bit longer?
Mm-hmm.
And as Superman prepares to face Brainiac alone and his city literally crumbles in front of his eyes, Lex comes in with another suit to save the day.
Yes, Lex, as the president of the United States, has pulled out his power suits. And we're not talking about his navy blue one. We are talking about a full-on automated just thing is massive, where he can fly, he can shoot lasers. He has all of his technology. He's able to save Lois before she gets crushed by something that was damaged in the process of when Brainiac started to attack. So he tells her to head on down to the bunker while he and Superman show Brainiac that Brawn beats Brain any moment of the day. And as this fight happens, Superman and Lex are really teaming up. They're a pretty good team here. As Lex, there are moments when Lex gets captured, Superman breaks him out, and vice versa. All with the plan that Lex will be using his technology to break through the force field that's surrounding Brainiac's ship, just giving Superman just enough space that he can fly through like the spear through Brainiac's ship once again, like he did in the montage scene earlier in the film. And by doing so, that he's able to once again show us that Superman does not like anything animatronic, anything robotic, as he pulls I can't remember which Mortal Kombat character this finishing move was, but basically pulled Brainiac's head, and all you just see is the ultimate fatality of just spine coming out.
Oh yeah, I thought that too. That's a classic Scorpion move.
Right.
So after fully getting rid of Brainiac, crushing his brain just to be sure, as all bad guys love to do, the ship is set to self-destruct and release 15 mini black holes or something ridiculous like that.
I just need to know how that's even possible.
What kind of boom tube technology? So it's pretty clear this thing can't be allowed to detonate on Earth. So Superman offers to take it to space, and Luthor points out, bro, not even you could get out of the way of an explosion like this in time and get it clear from Earth. And Superman's like, watch me, bro. And he flies straight into space, and as he pushes himself to the limit, he hears her voice again one more time, and about her hopes that he would save the world. Mm-hmm. And we see the explosion. We don't hear it. Love it. Accurate. Sound doesn't travel in space. So we just see the explosion, and the day is saved.
Yep. So now it seems as though Superman made the ultimate sacrifice here, in not only protecting his country but the world. So we see now that we're at a ceremony in front of the Capitol building, where Lex is talking about Superman and his own journey throughout this whole entire time of facing off against Superman. But more importantly, Lex is sharing that he is stepping down as president. He is retiring effective immediately, and his VP will now become president. And that VP is James Olsen. So we got a black president, y'all, in this universe.
Hey, like 40 years early or something like that. I wasn't keeping track of time, to be honest, but earlier than it normally could have happened.
Yeah. So as Lex is sharing this, we pan over to Lois, who is just scanning over the crowd, and she stops on this one individual, the most jacked individual wearing the trench coat, as it's clear that Superman has survived the blast, and she's shocked to see him at first, but he quickly disappears as she's just left with a smile on her face, knowing that their newfound friend has, survived and is hopefully going to just live quietly and have a relaxed life. Lex, after giving his speech, he heads on over to Lois and shares that, she asked him, what are you going to do next? Like, Hellboy's been conquering everything. So he says that he could do this. He could solve and cure things. But what he's going to do is that he's going to retire with his loving wife and on the beach and finally relax to finally give her the appreciation that she deserves over all these years. And that's how our movie ends. A loving note from Lex Luthor to his wife. Superman goes on to live his own life to figure out what to do next. As the credits roll on Superman Red Son. Now, before we give our sweet or sour rating, of course, we have to make sure that we keep on practicing our Russian. So while we try to figure out how to finally say Svetlana,
Nope.
maybe
that's not it. I think you got it.
We'll keep on practicing. But while we do that, here's a podcast you should be listening to from the Forgotten Entertainment family the next time you're not listening to us.
Attention, culture consumers. Join me, the Queen of Queries, Sarah O'Connor, and my band of nerdy knights.
Colleen McMillan.
Flo Siegel.
And Anders Drew.
On Bohemian Geek Studies, where we take extremely dorky dives into our favorite fandoms, especially that Star Wars galaxy far, far away. Listen each week as we examine the stories that mean so much to us. Bohemian Geek Studies is available wherever you get your podcasts and is proudly part of the Forgotten Entertainment family.
All right. Superman Red Son came out in 2020. So in the last 2 years, of this movie being out, Andrew, is this movie as sweet as a Russian dessert that's probably Superman might enjoy? Or is it more sour than Batman's face when he saw Superman walk through the gulag?
Well, recently we looked at Monster Mayhem, and I really thought that movie was probably going to be the worst thing we saw. And after seeing Red Son, though, that's not going to change because this is a sweet movie. This is a sweet ass movie. Oh man, this was so good. What Red Son does very well, not only does it have the action and the emotion that we like to see in a DC story, but there's so many subtle things this movie does, particularly with the rivalry of Superman and Lex Luthor, where they don't really ever come face to face until the final confrontation. It's like brilliant things like that. They've been playing chess across the board. There's even a quick scene where Lex Luthor has the chess pieces and he says, "Checkmate, Superman." And it speaks to how they've been playing this game from a distance and staying out of each other's ways. And for them to come together to save the world and then immediately part. And that's when Luthor's like, well, I don't even need to be president anymore because I feel like I've done what I needed to do here. Is a great Lex Luthor and Superman story. I also admire since Superman becoming evil is all the rage nowadays. I like this take on it where it wasn't a clean cut. He killed one person. He is irrevocably evil. He's never coming back kind of thing. It's a very subtle line of, if you're raised with this ideology and this belief, what could you become? Because this story in some ways could play out in America if Superman was more, saw some unjust incarceration and things like that. You could see this story transplanting in certain aspects to America. So it's not unreasonable to think of Superman turning out this way, even if he was dropped off in Kansas and things had been slightly different. So it poses a very interesting position of Superman and a very interesting view. Voice acting is great. Jason Isaacs, my man, killing it. And yeah, I just really like how this movie gives exactly what you need, and not more than that. But and that's all it needs to be a superb outing. And honestly, my only Arte alteration, because I like extra ice cream, is I would love to see more Brainiac and Superman's interactions in the middle, because it is so important to the climax. And it was great. It still works. It still logically pans out. I believed it, but it would have been a little bit more fun for me to see a little bit of their back and forth before the ultimate betrayal and Brainiac going wild and releasing every black hole he knows. But that's my minor gripe, because overall I had a sweet experience. How about you?
Nice. I had to give this movie a sour.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, only because I've read the comic before. This is my now maybe like third or fourth time reading through this comic. It's critically acclaimed. It's been nominated for awards. It just doesn't measure up to the comic. Otherwise, I will say this is definitely a very decent film. It's it's great for dialogue. It's great for action. I agree. The voice acting is superb. The animation is great. I think the animation is done by, I'm forgetting the studio, but they have also done some work on like Justice League Action, I believe, as well as the Zeta Project, another DC animated connected film, connected series. But the only reason why I'm giving it a sour is because, unfortunately, compared to the comic, it is very fast paced. And another thing that does come up is that, for me, it's just that it compared to the dialogue that we see in the comic, it is very similar. The plot's similar. A lot of the things that lead into it are very similar. However, the way that Superman is painted in the film, you can tell is more so from an American gaze still, because there are times where it's just his experience in the Gulag, not in the comic whatsoever. I thought it was an interesting choice. If not reading this comic, I would have been like, yes, that is a perfect transition. I love the sequence of events. Even just thinking about, as you mentioned, because I was just like, I'm glad that you mentioned it, the whole scene with Lana being in the light and dying in the light and having all that being present, because that moment happened in the and didn't happen in the comic but happened in the movie. It paints for me, it kind of paints that American storytelling of just like the one man with the going through and saving the day. He went in and just completely destroyed this gulag. He broke everybody out, and he's raised as a champion because of that, versus where we saw a lot in the comic where it's just all these like moments of legislation that he's probably putting together, the moments in which he's saving people, where he builds up the reputation of being seen as the people's champion. Here, it just seems like he did one great thing. It was done. People respected him, loved him because of it. So that's the only reason why it did feel a little sour to me, because again, they explore this, and it's an hour and a half, 80 or so minute long movie compared to 3 mini issue comics, both with like all 3 with like 52 pages each, honestly. So there's like a lot of depth of storytelling that you can go through. So again, it's just really just because of the nature of it being fast paced, and unfortunately the scene of how it can be interpreted, where it's just like he is being seen as the lone hero, and it's not really like a continuous effort to try to bring up and save the people. That's the only issues that I had. But other than that, it was definitely an enjoyable movie. I would just say, if you're gonna watch this, don't read the comic first. Watch the movie first and then read the comic. You will enjoy the movie way more.
Yeah, you know what? And I think this is a fair assessment, a fair perspective to get from you two, because if you have heard our Injustice episode, you will know that one of the things that pissed us off was that the way they kind of streamline the events of Injustice, the escalation in that movie is just too much, too fast. To the point where it just doesn't make any sense. And I'm not even going to get to Dead Robin or whatever the hell his name was. But I can understand when you try to take a big story and condense it and into a product, you can lose a lot, which seems like what's happened here. Yeah, I think that is a valid point to say, you know, what else was he doing? I felt the way the movie kind of approached that was more of people were just instantly afraid of him as opposed to praising him, right. Which I think that thematically worked throughout the movie. Because one thing I also want to talk about quick, now that you reminded me, is about Batman in this movie, who again, we don't learn too much about, but they kind of they want you to fill in the gaps of what happened to him. I mean, obviously it's heavily implied the boy Superman ran into in the Gulag became this Batman eventually. But I did kind of like how, by not revealing his identity, by not getting specific into his backstory, it could have been anybody. He so-called liberated during his quest. So I thought that was a very interesting convention and things to do. So I think I kind of, again, maybe because this is just coming off seeing Monster Mayhem, which crammed 80 million hours of plot into a 2-hour film. So maybe I'm in the mood for less plot, less streamlining. So maybe that's influencing my decision a bit. But I will, having not read it, I can't really weigh in on how it compares. But I trust your take. I trust you if you say, yeah, it doesn't capture everything that we need to know.
I will definitely say to another great thing. I'm glad you brought up the Batman thing. I preferred the story of who Batman is in the movie compared to the comic, because it does end up tying a lot into Superman's story, to the point where it's just like, now you have to question, like, how old is Superman? Because like, he saw Batman as a kid, he connected with him. I'll save it actually for the comic book section, just kind of like the history of what happened with Batman. But I definitely will say that like the movie did it better, because I did like the idea. It's just like, even though they implied with that scene with the kid next to his dead parents, the bats, you know, the Bruce Wayne smirk, I guess you could say, that probably you saw and have, you still didn't know who Batman was. And I love that idea, because it really helped to push forward the idea that like of Batman being that symbol of, you know, what he's always talking about, but more so the people who rise up, to don their own capes, their own cowls, to follow Batman in his endeavors to take down Superman. You know, it shows that it could be anyone. So I kind of wish that they did that in the comic, but it gets tied too much into Superman's story that it just feels like, once again, like we just kind of did a Dark Knight Returns or Batman versus Superman point in that in that comic. But speaking about the comic, we were talking again about Superman Red Sun. This is a comic of the same name. It was a 3-part 2003 miniseries written by Mark Miller. I think the name is, gone through all of comic bookdom if you ever look at it, because he became famous after writing The Authority, the DC Wildstorm publication. But since then, he's been involved in he basically created the works that would later inspire the Avengers films, Captain America Civil War, Wanted, Kick-Ass, Logan, and Jupiter's Legacy. But yeah, it's the comic and the movie are very similar. In the 3-part miniseries, we do get this like time jump of Superman going through and becoming the leader of Russia while fighting off against Lex. So we get this sense of like Superman's rise as the agent of Marxism, his battles with Lex, and the other Cold War the other Cold War that Batman has with him, and all of that. So the major differences that we do see are, again, as I mentioned, it's just a bit more story that's in the comic. Understand that you can't put all of that into this animated film. Maybe if it was a series of a short series, a limited series of some way, shape, or form, but obviously things had to get cut, like including one character who's the Russian version of Pete Ross. This is Superman's best friend from growing up, but you always hear of Lana Lang as the love interest, but then you have Pete Ross, who in this universe, he is the son, one of the illegitimate children of Stalin. And, he rose up through the ranks to make sure that he could gain next in power after his father's passing. But once Superman came onto the scene, there's tension now between Peter and Superman, because Superman doesn't really see it as much of an issue. Like, he doesn't want to take lead or anything like that when we're first introduced to their dynamic. But as things progress, this is where we see that Superman has to, and it's causing a lot of jealousy to come from Peter, who wants that power back. This leads into several moments of betrayal, including that Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman battle, where Peter tells Batman where he can find Superman, what he needs to do to capture Superman. So by doing so during the battle, before Batman sacrifices himself or blows himself up, he reveals that Peter was the one that orchestrated this, and this causes Superman to go ahead and turn Peter into one of his like lobotomized servants. So that plays like a big part in the story and leads more into Superman's corruption of what does it mean to have that much power at that point in his life. As I mentioned, there is also a difference in story for Batman. Batman, instead of there's no gulag scene. Batman is just another Russian kid who, unfortunately, his parents do get shot and killed. This time we find out it's actually by Peter, who later tells this younger version of this Russian Bruce Wayne to run away. Doesn't want to see him there, like crying over his parents' dead bodies, because they were organizing some propaganda against Stalin. And as this kid tries to hold his ground, Peter shoots him, causing Batman or Bruce to run away. And this leads into the journey. We don't see it, but we do see that he comes back as an older man, ready to take down Superman's regime, because at that point, Stalin does die, not by Superman's hands, but from effective poisoning. And this leads into that full battle. Another great scene, which I kind of wish they included too, was that we see and hear more from Batman getting people to go against Superman. We see the propaganda that he's sending out. He even, during his battle with Superman, where he has Wonder Woman tied up, when Superman is trapped underneath the prison, Superman is calling out to Wonder Woman, telling her that she needs to go and find the generator to go destroy it so that he could come out and save them. But Batman goes into Wonder Woman and is like, no, that he's been corrupted. His power has corrupted him. He's trying to do that with you right now too. And it's here where we kind of see a sense of like desperation from Batman that I felt like we kind of missed in the movie. But he keeps repeating to Wonder Woman how Superman is just using her. And because of hearing that, even though she does destroy the generator, even though she does lose her youth, she decides to still leave Superman. And later on, she will then use her because of her current state of being older, being really like distant. She decides to go back to Themyscira because she's realizing how dangerous Superman is, how he's just another man corrupted by power. So she leads a legion of Wonder Women to team up alongside the Green Lantern Corps to go fight against Superman.
Oh, damn. That is a pretty intimidating opening.
Yeah. So, so like I was kind of hoping that we got a chance to, it would have been hard to do that because it's clear that like in the comic, it's more well known that Themyscira is like, has that kind of ambassador with Wonder Woman and Queen Hippolyta. And it's more of a recognized place, but in the movie, I understand they couldn't really do that because they only really introduced Wonder Woman and Diana for the sake of this friendship, which does get explored as well in the comic. Another thing that I applaud the movie for is that they actually state that Wonder Woman is interested in women. In the comic, it's just kind of seen as like a maybe. Like Superman states, she's always just been one of the guys, and I'm just glad that we had an opportunity where they finally just said that yes, she is interested in women. That is, Superman does not need to even be thinking about their relationship like that. This is solely a platonic friendship. And then the biggest, the next difference is really the dynamic between Lex, Superman, and Lois. In the comic, it does show more that Lois does seem to have a bit of interest in Superman. She's kind of like the stereotype mom in a Lifetime movie who's like checking through that ex's Facebook page. But honestly, it doesn't even exceed her husband's interest in Superman. Because in the comic, after Superman does something, he decides to tell Lois that they need to more or less end their marriage because he's now going to dedicate the rest of his life to taking down and destroying Superman.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they kind of left that a little ambiguous in the movie.
Yeah, it's she completely, she's just like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to remain married. We'll just see each other for our anniversaries. But this time around, they really do actively call it and just say that like we're not going to be sharing the same home together, but on paper we are still married. And then the only reason why Lex decided to do this is because it wasn't because of there's some crazy plan that he had that Superman foiled in any way, shape, or form. It's because Lex is so smart in this universe, which they show in the movie, but not to the fullest extent, that they boast that like he's playing chess against multiple people while maybe reading a book or working on another project. And during one time when Superman does come to the States, I think it was during the same moment of the satellite, he does go into Lex's like place of work where he sees a chess set that Lex is using. He's playing against himself. So Superman goes in and moves some of the pieces, putting Lex in checkmate. And because of that, he's just like, I must now take down Superman, a person who made a fool of me, even though no one saw that he made a fool of me.
I mean, look, we all know we've all played NBA Street with the homies, and you gotta defend your honor behind closed doors.
Dang. Still a little hurt about that one, Andrew. And then finally, the biggest difference of all is actually today's WTF moment in comics. So as we know, our movie ends on a pretty positive note. Superman saves the day from the bigger threats. He does survive. Also in the movie, Lex finally wins. So he decides to retire and dedicate his life to his long underappreciated wife. And we also get the Black president. So, you know, we got to keep on saying that because, you know, we don't know if it will ever happen again. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But this comic decided to switch that up. And it's clear that the movie did it in a way where it's just like, I did like the way the movie did end it, but the comic does it in a way where it's just like, you were clearly just going to mess with the readers here. Superman does save the day. He's reported dead, but that's not the case. But we focus in more on the story of Lex after the events of Superman stopping Brainiac and taking the ship from exploding the 6 miniature black holes. So instead of Lex stepping down as president, he continues on. He actually gets a second term with his vice president, James B. Olsen, who is not black, unfortunately, in this comic.
Damn it.
Yeah. So during his time as president, he allows the United States government to go into Russia to take it over. This brings them into the fold of the global United States. And once he finally steps down, once his term is done, he starts to dedicate his life to the betterment of humanity. He does well with it too. Like people with his advancements in science and culture, he decides to put artists and scientists and philosophers in control of the United States, planets, United countries. And because of that, that frees up his time to pursue his scientific efforts, including allowing people to live up to the age of 800.
Okay, sure. You get to see all the Marvel movies, I guess.
And also he himself lives into the 4th millennium. So again, this is happening in the 1930s to the 60s. So assuming he probably makes it to like the year 3000, bordering 4. So as he lives up to the year for the 4th million, the funeral does happen. In this case, instead of him stepping down as president, it's a funeral where Lois sees Clark, or Superman, once again. And it's talked about through Superman's storytelling as the narrator now. He's talking about how just what a great person Lex was, and how eventually he realized that the people didn't need a Superman as much as he thought he did. He tells more about Lex's history, how Lex and Lois ended up having kids and grandkids and a long line of descendants. And in that time, society advanced crazily. But unfortunately, with the advancement came a lot of pressures within the world, such as the sun started turning red.
Oh.
It was just because of long-term advancements and technology just messing around with everything. The sun turns red. It endangers the world. So there's only one man left to stop it. And we're introduced to Lex and Lois's great-grandson to the power of 50, Jor-El.
Okay.
Jor-El, upset that people aren't listening to him, decides to send his baby son, Kal-El, in a rocket that ends up being a time ship. And that time ship takes off and lands in the Ukraine in 1938.
No. I'm sorry. I'm going to reject that one. That is a little wild. And it clearly doesn't work. So
yes, it does create the that unfortunately that was that time paradox that unfortunately that one, Lex will forever be in battle with his descendants, but also that Jor-El's plan will never work. But yeah, that's the way the comic kind of goes, and honestly, this isn't the first time we've kind of seen a version of Superman that's like connected to a specific country. It's Red Sun is a popular story. And I know there was a recently adapted into a season of Supergirl as well, in which Supergirl was also cloned or split for the Kasnian government, where they created Red Daughter that was controlled by Lex. Spoilers if you have not seen Supergirl, I guess. But in comics, that's not the only time that we've had a Superman dedicated to a singular country. Superman in mainstream media is a very American nationalist symbol. So eventually, because of that, with works of like Superman Red Sun, it led into another comic called Superman True Brit. This was a one-shot comic from 2004 written by John Cleese, where Kal-El, instead of landing in Kansas, he actually landed in England. Funny thing, they gave him the name Colin Clark because they didn't realize that Colin was actually Kal-El. And it got canceled because it was too offensive to the British people.
He was like, T is my super strength, and like
I refuse to read this, so but I'm just gonna say yes.
Okay.
But also we have a new Superman who is operating now currently. This is the Superman, that's super-man of China. He first appeared in Superman, again, super-man #1 in 2016. This is following the events of the Darkseid Apocalypse War story arc, in which Superman, upon absorbing all that energy from Apocalypse, he unfortunately deteriorates. His body starts to deteriorate to the point where he's going to explode with all this energy. So he's looking for a successor, and it's a bunch of people are stepping up here and there. But we get introduced to Kong Kenan, who recently in comic book news, it looks like the entire super family is going to get a redesign, and he is part of that new super family. He got his powers because originally he was a bully, and then he threw a soda can at a supervillain when the supervillain was attacking people. So yeah, it's like a scene that works well in My Hero Academia, but not so much for Kylie Jenner. But it does get filmed, and there's this private organization funded by the Chinese government that is just like, we actually attained some of the life force energy of Superman when he exploded. So they decide to give it to him as he becomes the new Superman of China, which leads into him creating a branch of the Justice League called the Justice League of China, where he's teaming up with Batman, that's Bat-Man. Every time I say one of these people is going to have a hyphen in between. We got Wonder Woman, the Flash, whose real name is Avery Ho. She received her powers during a second speed storm. Dragon Son, who is Aquaman in this branch of the Justice League, and finally Robin Bot, who is kind of like their Alpha 5.
That's enough. That's enough of all that universe. When you said Robin Bot, that's where you kind of got me. I'm getting Monster Mayhem flashbacks, all right? Some PTSD.
But yeah, Superman, he's always been a favorite, definitely recognized as an American hero. So it's kind of cool to see this alternate reality where Superman does end up in a different place. It's been toyed around with so often. As we mentioned, there's the Supergirl episode. There's an episode of, I believe, Justice League Action, in which they also kind of covered this story as well. But overall, movie is good. I honestly say that the movie is good. However, if you don't want it to be sour for you, please don't read the comic first. Or if you read the comic, just try to watch the movie long time after you've seen it, read it.
That is sounds like a fair assessment, because I had a great time, but yeah, sometimes don't read the book.
Yeah. Down with literature. All right. Well, that wraps up our Sweet or Sour episode of Superman Red Sun. Stay tuned for next week as we'll continue on with the penultimate episode of our Sweet or Sour season, our 2021 film, where it's going to be where Batman meets Ninja.
Yes, Souls, dragons, but not House of Dragon. You'll see it all next time. I don't know anything about this movie, guys, so I'm spitballing here.
Well, until then, take care of yourselves and remember that I guess don't read the book before you watch the movie.
Yeah, and if someone offers for you to be part of the Green Lantern Corps and it's like based in the US, stay in the back. You might make it.
Yeah, definitely.